Unit tests. It tests a single function, method, or a class. The goal of unit test is to verify the correctness of a unit of logic under a variety of conditions. External dependencies of the unit under test are generally mocked out. Unit tests generally don't read or write from or to disks, any of those other services, render to screen, or receive user actions from outside the process running the test. For more information regarding unit tests, we can view the examples or additional helps on CLI. So there are few demo we have for unit testing. One is introduction to unit test and the second is mock dependency using Mockito. So we can mock out the dependencies which we required on unit testing. So let's go with this first example which required the unit tests and how we can implement the unit test in our sample application. So we have the counter app and the counter test class. So this is the simple example we have. In the counter app we have just normal counter class which have the value 0 which incrementing the value, and another method is decrement which decrementing the value by 1. And once we have those kind of class in test, we need to write the test cases for the class. So in general we are just testing the counter class and their different functions. So when we call the counter dot increment, it should increment the counter value. So we are combining the one value, default value should be 0. When we increment its value, it should be getting 1, and when we decrement it should be the -1. So we have the multiple tests which support those kind of things, and to run those tests we have two options. In IntelliJ we can run the run test cases and the test in test. In VS Code we can just press the run in the debug section, or using the terminal we can run the Flutter test and the test file. So these are the options. So let's try to implement those in our environment so you can have a better idea. So I'm just creating the new Flutter project with latest Flutter in channel. So it's just flutter create dot means the current directory. So it will create the project in current directory. So now we have our project ready and we have all those things. But now as per this example I am trying to create the counter class, counter dot dart, and class counter integer value 0 and void increment value plus plus void decrement value minus minus. So this is our simple counter class, and now I am writing test for this counter class. So I am just right clicking and go to test. We don't have any counter underscore test file, so it will create one for us. As we don't want to test the widget, I just want to write the normal unit test. So it's just normal unit test counter default value. So I'm just testing its default value. So now expect is one of the helper function where we can provide the actual value and the measure what we are expecting. So here I am creating the counter class object and checking its value. It should be 0. Counter's default value should be 0. Our expected behavior should be. So now I have a run button over here. I am just running the test and it should be fine. Now my test is passed. You can see the tick mark over here as well as the green tick over here. So our test is passing. So now I am writing the another test. Now counter increment once and value should be 1. So I am just creating the counter object counter dot increment, and now here instead of the new object I am just using that object, and it should have a 1 value. Now this test is also passing. Now another test, counter decrement, value should be -1, decrement value should be -1. So I am now running this test. So as you know, this application is not running, we can run the unit test without much of the waiting time and everything. So now I am running the new test, counter increment once, increment twice, and decrement once, then value should be 1, correct? So now I am counter increment, it's twice, and the decrement once, then value should be 1. So we can write as many tests as we need based on the data we have or the ideas we have or logic we have. So these are the tests, and also if this is the one of the group of our test, we can combine all those tests and just create one group, and we can say it's a counter test, and this way we are all good with the unit testing of this counter. And we can run complete file of the test by clicking on the main. It will check every test in the file, or we can run independent group or individual tests or everything. So this is the first example we got for the unit testing. So this is the simple counter example. We can have any of your class, any of your method, or however we would like, we can just implement the unit test. For this we need the dev dependency as a test, but when we create a new project we have by default is a Flutter test as a dependency, so that's fine, and the Flutter test by default depends on the test, so we don't need those tests in way